Hi! Today we're going to learn about the dot product. Let's say we have a problem like this. Calculate the angle between the vectors vector v, which is 5, 3, 1, and vector w, which is 7, 10, 30. So, before we get started, we have to know what the dot product is. So the dot product is one of the ways to multiply vectors, and it's in quotation marks because you can't actually multiply vectors. This just tells you something else. So, what's the formula for a dot product? Well, if we have vectors A, which is equal to A1, A2, A3, and vector B, which is equal to B1, B2, and B3, then the dot product is equal to, so the dot product is written like this. The dot product is equal to A1 times B1 plus A2 times B2 plus A3 times B3. Now, there's also another formula for the dot product, and that is the magnitude of vector A times the magnitude of vector B times cosine of theta, which is the angle between the two vectors. So, now let's get started with the problem. Calculate the angle between the vectors v, which is 5, 3, 1, and vector w, which is 7, 10, 3. So before we get started, memorize these two formulas and write them down in your notes. Alright, so how do we calculate the angle between the vectors? Well, we know that the second formula was the magnitude of vector A times magnitude of vector B times cosine of theta. So, we know that we first have to find the dot product without that second formula. So we have to find the dot product with that first formula. So, vector v dot vector w is equal to 5 times 7, or 35, plus 3 times 10, or 30, plus 1 times 3, or 3, which is equal to 68. Alright, so now that we know that the dot product is 68, we know that this is also equal to the magnitude of vector v times the magnitude of vector w times the cosine of the angle between vectors v and w, so cosine of theta. So now let's find out what the magnitude of vector v and the magnitude of vector w are. The magnitude of vector v is equal to the square root of 5 squared plus 3 squared plus 1 squared, or just 1, which is equal to 35. I mean the square root of 35, which is equal to the square root of 35. The magnitude of vector w is equal to the square root of 7 squared plus 10 squared plus 3 squared. 7 squared plus 10 squared plus 3 squared, which is equal to the square root of 158. So, now let's write down what we know. So, the dot product is also equal to the square root of 35 times the square root of 158, which can also be written as the square root of 35 times 158 times cosine theta. Actually, let's just shift this over. So I'm going to erase this, so write it down. So we know that the square root of 35 times the square root of 158, which is the square root of 35 times 158, times cosine theta is equal to 68. So that means that cosine theta, so cosine theta is equal to 68 over the square root of 135 times 158. So that means that the answer to our problem is theta is equal to inverse cosine or arc. I cannot spell today. So is equal to arc cosine of 68 over the square root of 35 times 158. Today we learned about the dot product. Thanks for watching this video.